When talking about crockery in coffee service, there are a number of different types of crockery that we use. Firstly, a milk jug. Your milk jug may look slightly different. Actually, probably looks different. There are hundreds of different styles of milk jug, whether it has a little handle, whether it has no handle at all, whether it's bigger or smaller, whether it's covered or whether it's open. When talking about milk jugs, as with all crockery, it's important to ensure cleanliness. Now, the reason why I emphasize this on the milk jug is because so often milk jugs are stored on tables, and we remove them from the tables and we refill them with milk without cleaning them. And we serve them to the table and we refill them and serve them to the table. And what ends up happening is, because we're recycling the milk jugs, we get a residue of milk on the inside of a milk jug. Be aware of this and make sure that you attend to the cleanliness and hygiene when serving a milk jug. Next is the sugar bowl. Again, your sugar bowl at your establishment may look a lot different to this, and probably does. Generally, sugar bowls are always covered. You may have an open sugar bowl with packets of sugar and sweetener inside. Whatever you have, again, remember to attend to the hygiene. Sugar bowls don't generally get cleaned before use. We restock them, put them on the table, restock them, put them on the table. We have to proactively take the sugar out, clean the inside of the sugar bowl, and then restock it. Now, this may seem like an unnecessary task, but when you lift the sugar bowl and you can see sugar from 1956 inside your sugar bowl, it's not appealing. It shows that the establishment is not hygienic and not professional. The next item we're going to talk about is the espresso cup and saucer. Obviously smaller than the bigger cappuccino or Americano cup. The espresso cup is obviously meant for shorter, smaller, more powerful coffees, such as a single or double espresso. It is smaller and it is more dainty because the level of coffee, the amount of coffee, is going to be smaller. If you serve a single espresso in a large cup, it's going to look like a tiny amount of coffee. If you serve a double espresso in a large cup, it's going to look like a small amount of coffee. But if you are serving it in the correct crockery, it's going to look professional and neat. Make sure when you are serving espresso cups, you have the required cutlery, the demitasse spoon, or teaspoon if you don't have a demitasse spoon. Then we move to the slightly bigger cup, in which we serve flat whites, cappuccinos, Americanos, mochas, etc., etc., etc. And again, your establishment may have a slightly different style of cup. Now, the size of the cup, when we're talking about cappuccino, for example, is incredibly important in the recipe of that style of coffee. If the size of the cup is too large, for example, if it's 350 mils, we are going to combine 60 mils of espresso with 290 mils of milk, which then throws out the delicate balance and affects the flavor of the drink. Then we move to the latte cup. And I say latte cup because generally lattes are served in a cup like this. Now, it's made out of glass. You can see that's the major difference between this and all the other ways we serve coffee, because lattes, if they're made correctly, will layer. And the reason why it's clear glass is so that we can see that layering. If it was crockery such as this, we wouldn't appreciate the method and skill that the barista took to make that particular type and style of coffee. Now, when dealing with crockery, particularly this type of crockery, there's a couple of rules we need to adhere to. When we are dealing with saucers and plates and platters, we are aware that we can stack them. We can put one on top of the other. Make sure that if you are stacking, you need to clean the bottom as well as the top before you stack plates, saucers, etc., etc. But when we are dealing with something like a teacup or a cappuccino cup, stacking is impossible. As you can see, that is inefficient, and the weak point on a teacup or cappuccino cup is actually on the rim. Many people think that the weakest point is actually the ear, but the weakest point on this cup is the rim. And the reason why stacking is so bad for this type of crockery is, if I place one on top of the other, the pressure point is on the weakest point of the bottom piece of crockery. And you will know from working with cups and saucers that these type of cups often get chipped on the top, on the rim. And that's not because guests have big teeth and are clonking them into their teeth, because somebody has decided to stack the crockery and forced the rim of the cup to be chipped. Be aware of that. If you find a chip in a piece of crockery, throw it away immediately and inform your manager. The reason why this is important is because bacteria lives inside these little cracks. Also, it is going to be the first thing that a guest sees when you put the cup of coffee down. And if the cup is chipped, they know that you haven't attended to the detail and can make that assumption for your coffee. If I look at a cup of coffee with a chipped rim, I automatically think that the coffee is going to be bad. It could be the best cup of coffee in the world, but if it's served in a chipped cup, I will automatically think that it is a poor cup of coffee. Often, when guests are drinking coffee, they will enjoy a cigarette. So, with coffee service, we need to remember the rules about ashtray service. Now, you get different types of ashtrays, but generally, the types that you may have in your establishment would be open ashtrays and slightly closed ashtrays with water in the bottom. Take note of how your guests react when a cup of coffee is put down on their table. Some guests will reach for their packet of cigarettes, make a mental note to quickly go and fetch an ashtray. Ashtray service needs to be quick, sharp, and efficient. As soon as guests look at a packet of cigarettes, if you see a packet of cigarettes in their pocket, if you think that they may be smokers, bring out an ashtray immediately. Remember when clearing ashtrays, particularly when clearing open ashtrays, that if you remove it quickly from the table, ash will blow onto a guest or onto the table. We want to try and avoid this as much as possible. So the simple rules of ashtray service involve taking a clean ashtray off a tray, putting it on top of the dirty ashtray, clearing both, putting it on the tray, and placing the clean ashtray back on the table. Then, if you've got a service cloth, covering the dirty ashtray before walking away with this on the tray. If you don't cover it and walk away, the same rule applies. The wind will blow the ash back onto the table or perhaps back onto the guest, and that's something you certainly don't want to see. A better ashtray is generally when we have a little bit of water or ice at the bottom of the ashtray. When guests ash inside, the ash then is absorbed by the water, and we don't have to worry about ash blowing anywhere. So we don't have to stack on top of this type of ashtray. And the last thing to remember with this type of ashtray is make sure you do not spill the water, particularly if it is a dirty ashtray, because then the ash-filled water may drip onto the guest, and that's the last thing that you want.
There are a few important things to remember about your crockery and glassware. Crucially important is that every single piece of crockery and glassware needs to be spotlessly clean and polished. Let's have a look at the vital element in each piece. Milk jugs. Be aware of milk residues building up in your milk jug, and make sure that you use a clean milk jug in between each use. Sugar bowls. Proactively remove the sugar and the sugar packets and the granular or cubed sugar from the bowls and clean the bowls before restocking. This needs to be done every day so that you don't get a buildup of sugar in the sugar bowl. Cups. Be sure to serve the appropriate beverage in the correct size of cup or glass that your establishment uses. Never stack your cups, mugs, or glasses. This is sure to damage some of the weak points of the cup, especially the rim, and this means it has to be thrown away immediately, so it's a big cost to your establishment. Saucers, plates, and platters. This crockery can be stacked. However, be sure to clean the top and bottom of each item so that you prevent the transfer of dirt and grime from one to the other. Always throw away any chipped or cracked crockery and glassware, as the chips will often harbour or store bacteria. Latte or hot chocolate glasses. These are used for the larger and often layered hot beverages, which are best served with a long-handled teaspoon. Ashtrays. Anticipate the needs of your guests. If you know that they are a smoker, look for cigarettes, lighters in a pocket or on the table, and that will help you to anticipate that they are going to need an ashtray. If you are able to anticipate the needs of your guests, you should bring out a clean ashtray with their coffee, provided that you are in a smoking environment. Ashtray service needs to be quick, sharp, and efficient. We need to always replace dirty ashtrays using the 2-butt method. We always need to replace it as soon as there are 2 butts in the ashtray, and we can see this by walking past the table or taking extra care in noticing how our guests are smoking. As soon as you see 2 dirty butts in the ashtray, you will need to replace your ashtray for your guests.